The house on the hill. It stood alone, shrouded in shadow. Blackwood House. Just the name sent shivers down my spine. Locals whispered tales, stories of disappearances, unexplained noises, a darkness that clung to the house like a shroud. I couldn't resist its pull. I had to see it for myself. The old iron gates creaked open. Each step up the overgrown path filled me with dread. The air grew colder, heavier, as if a weight pressed down on me. The house loomed larger with every step, its windows like vacant eyes watching my approach. A cold shiver ran down my spine. This was a place of secrets, dark and terrible secrets. Blackwood House had a long, troubled history. Its walls whispered secrets of a bygone era, tales of joy and sorrow, interwoven like the intricate patterns on its faded wallpaper. Built over a century ago, it was once home to a wealthy family, the Blackwoods. They were known for their opulence and grandeur, hosting lavish parties that were the talk of the town. But their fortune was tainted with tragedy. The laughter that once echoed through the halls was replaced by an eerie silence, as if the house itself mourned the loss. The Blackwood heir disappeared without a trace. One night, he simply vanished, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt the family for generations. His parents followed soon after, driven mad by grief, some say. Their once vibrant lives were reduced to shadows, their faces etched with sorrow and despair. The house stood empty for decades, its grand rooms and ornate furnishings slowly decayed, a silent witness to the passage of time, a monument to their sorrow. The once proud estate became a ghostly relic, a reminder of the family's tragic fate, or perhaps something more sinister. Whispers of dark rituals and cursed objects began to circulate, adding to the house's ominous reputation. Locals spoke of the Blackwoods in hushed tones. Their stories were filled with fear and superstition, painting a picture of a family doomed by their own misdeeds. They believed the family was cursed, that their misfortunes were not mere coincidences, but the result of a malevolent force that had taken hold of their lives, that their souls were trapped within the house, unable to find peace. The restless spirits of the Blackwoods were said to roam the halls, forever bound to their ancestral home. As I stepped across the threshold, I could feel their presence. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, as if the house itself was watching me, a cold, oppressive energy that clung to me like cobwebs. The house remembered. It held on to the memories of its past inhabitants, their joys and sorrows etched into its very fabric. And it wasn't happy to see me. The feeling of being unwelcome was palpable, a chilling reminder that some places are best left undisturbed. The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of decay. Cobwebs hung from every corner, and the silence was broken only by the creaking of the house itself. As I explored, I noticed strange symbols etched into the walls. Ancient runes and sigils, symbols of a power I couldn't comprehend. Each room seemed colder than the last. A sense of dread grew within me. What had happened in this house? What dark rituals had been performed within its walls? The Blackwoods had been practitioners of the occult, that much was clear. But what were they trying to achieve? And what had become of them? I reached the top of the grand staircase. A long, dark hallway stretched before me. The air here felt different, charged with an unseen energy. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Thump, thump, thump. It was then that I felt it, a presence. Something was watching me. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just the shadows playing tricks on me. Or so I told myself. But the feeling persisted. A cold spot on my skin, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I wasn't alone in Blackwood House, something else was here with me. The sound of dread. I continued down the hallway, each step echoing in the silence. The floorboards creaked under my weight. Then I heard it, footsteps, heavy measured footsteps coming from the room at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar, and a sliver of pale moonlight illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. My heart pounded in my chest. Who else could be in the house? Vandals or something else? Something more sinister? I had to know. Slowly, cautiously, I reached for the doorknob. It was ice cold to the touch. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. Face to face. The room was empty. Moonlight streamed through the grimy windows, illuminating faded furniture and decaying drapes. Dust lay thick on every surface, but the footsteps had stopped, and the room was filled with an unnatural chill, a cold that seemed to seep into my bones. Then I saw it. In the far corner, partially hidden by shadows, a figure stood facing the wall. Its back was to me, but I could make out the outline of a man. He was tall and thin, dressed in what looked like a long coat. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. The figure didn't move. It stood there, eerily still, as if it were a statue carved from the shadows themselves. Didn't even seem to register my presence. It was as if I was invisible, a mere ghost in its world. I took a step closer, my hand reaching out to touch its shoulder. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears like a drum. As I did, the figure slowly turned. The movement was almost mechanical, each motion deliberate and unnervingly slow. And I found myself staring into a face that froze the blood in my veins. It was a visage of pure terror, something out of a nightmare. It was pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to burn with an unnatural light. Those eyes bore into me, as if they could see right through my soul. Its lips were pulled back in a grotesque grin, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Each tooth was like a dagger, sharp and menacing. The creature let out a low growl, a sound that seemed to vibrate deep within my chest. Terror gripped me. It was a primal fear, one that I couldn't shake off. I stumbled back, my foot catching on a loose floorboard. The sudden jolt of pain brought me back to my senses, but the fear remained. I fell, scrambling backwards in a desperate attempt to get away. My hands clawed at the floor, trying to find some purchase to pull myself up. The creature took a step towards me, its grin widening. It seemed to relish in my fear, feeding off my terror. I scrambled to my feet and ran. My legs felt like lead, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I didn't dare look back, knowing that the creature was right behind me. The only thought in my mind was to escape, to get as far away as possible from that horrifying figure. I didn't dare look back. I could hear the creature's heavy footsteps pounding after me, its ragged breathing echoing in the hallway. I raced through the house, my mind a whirlwind of terror. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every creak of the floorboards sounded like the creature's approach. I had to get out. I burst out of a room, my lungs burning, my legs screaming for respite, but I couldn't stop. Not now, not when the creature was so close. I rounded a corner, my hand brushing against the wall for guidance. And that's when I realized the horrifying truth. I was lost. Panic swelled in my chest, threatening to overwhelm me. I was trapped in Blackwood House with a creature of nightmares. My only thought was escape. I had to get out. I ran blindly, my hope dwindling with every passing second. Then, through the terror, I saw it. A faint glow in the distance. The front door. With renewed determination, I surged forward. The creature's footsteps were getting closer, its growls echoing through the house. But I was faster. I could feel the cool night air on my face. I lunged for the doorknob, my fingers wrapping around the cold metal. It wouldn't turn. It was locked. Despair washed over me. I was trapped. The feeling was suffocating, much like the cricket in the jar, desperate for freedom, but finding none. The walls seemed to close in, and the air grew thick with an unseen presence. But then I remembered the old adage about haunted houses. They say that in places like these, the spirits hold sway over the living. The moonlight cast eerie shadows, making the mansion appear even more sinister. They say you have to ask the spirits to let you leave. It was a desperate measure, but I had no other choice. The silence was deafening, and the darkness seemed to pulse with a life of its own. With trembling lips, I whispered into the darkness, "Please let me go." My voice was barely audible, a mere breath against the oppressive silence. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat a reminder of my fragile mortality. For a moment, nothing happened. The room remained still, as if holding its breath. The tension was unbearable, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Then, with a resounding click, the lock disengaged. The sound was both a relief and a terror, for it meant that the spirits had heard me. But what did they want in return? I threw open the door and stumbled out into the night. The cool air was a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I realized I was free. But the fear still clung to me. I didn't stop running until I was far from Blackwood House. My legs burned and my lungs screamed for air, but I couldn't stop. The fear of what might follow drove me onward, As I caught my breath, I could still feel the creature's eyes on me, watching from the shadows. It was as if the house itself was alive, its malevolent gaze never leaving me. I had escaped with my life, but I knew I would never be the same. The experience had marked me, leaving an indelible scar on my soul. I could never forget the feeling of being watched, of being at the mercy of something beyond my understanding. Blackwood House had claimed a part of me that night. It had taken my peace of mind, my sense of safety. I knew that others had not been so lucky, that the house had claimed many victims over the years, and it had a message for anyone foolish enough to enter its doors. Turn back while you still can. The warning was clear, etched into the very fabric of the place. It was a place of darkness, of secrets best left undisturbed. Some secrets are best left buried. The truth about Blackwood House was one of those secrets, a dark mystery that should never be uncovered. For those who dared to seek it out, the price was always too high.